And Nima joins me now here on the set after that extensive journey from Egypt to Italy. It is really remarkable that you've put a face on the desperation of these migrants. We've seen them all come across the Mediterranean. To me, what struck me right there was that two laws act actually against the children. One, that they can come to Europe and stay there under the law, so their parents send them away. And two, that they can't be prosecuted, so the traffickers use them. Did they ever imagine that they were coming into just one frying pan after leaving, the fire?
No, and that's what we heard continuously from the children and their parents, that their perception of Europe is really this awaiting paradise. They're going to get there, they're going to go to school, but they're also going to work, which obviously the two are impossible to do at the same time. And they're also going to be supported, they're going to be able to support us. At no point did any of the children, and this was what really struck us, at no point did any of the children feel like they were being exploited. That was what really, I think, was heartbreaking. They felt they had a choice. At 11 and 12 and 13, they felt this was their choice to become the men in their families.
Adults before their time, we've seen that so often across the Middle East, particularly in these war-torn places where kids have to become adults so quickly. In one of the reports this week, we saw papers being exchanged. We saw the Egyptian parents with their contracts. We saw the lawyers that you showed us and who you talked to in Italy. What is happening? Are the parents, are the Italian authorities able to connect the children back with their parents? Is there any solution to this legal dilemma?
Well, the parents and the children are falling into that gap between the Italians and the Egyptians. The Italians have actually formally requested the extradition of 3, what they're calling kingpins of smuggling networks. They said they're tired of filling their jails with the people crewing this ship. They want the men at the top. The Egyptians haven't handed them over. And what was...
So these are the people, before they even take off, from the coastal village, that they are being taken into this crime ring in Egypt itself.
Well, the Italians and the Egyptians accept this. They believe this is a transnational organization. Egypt, Italy, even in Greece, across southern Europe and North Africa. But until the Egyptians cooperate, there's very little they can do. And those mothers you saw in the first episode, their children are part of one of the biggest investigations that the Sicilian prosecutor is involved with. The Sicilians think they know who's responsible for this, but they're not being handed over.
And this, horrible situation for these children happens across a much wider backdrop of a spike in sexual predators. We've just seen this awful report from the British NSPCC, the Prevention of Cruelty to Children, of a huge rise, apparently 85 sexual crimes reported per day here in this country to police.
It gives you a sense of how widespread that exploitation is. I mean, we have the figures here. 85 a day, that's over 30,000 in this last year. That's over 30% rise. And a lot of people believe it's because, of course, we've had this high-profile investigation into known prominent figures in this country over the last few years who are alleged to be involved with child sexual abuse rings. But actually, the NSPCC believes it's more than that. They believe that actually the offences are going up. And when you think about that, and these are children that are in their homes, they're in their home country, you start to wonder what hope the kids coming over from Egypt have.
Well, exactly. I mean, if it's happening here, what about them, as you say? But there are some good news stories, and you reported them. Karim, in one of your reports, he is not as desperate as the others. Give us a quick snapshot of his future.
Karim was extraordinary. We can see his picture now. He actually had had a hard life before he even got on that boat. He'd been working since he was 8. He got to Italy at 12, and since then, he's turned his life completely around. He looks after the younger boys. He's really found a family in Italy, and that was one of the other things that struck me and Dominique, our producer on this, is you hear so much about the racism that migrants face and the difficulty they find acclimatizing in their cultures, but in this tiny Sicilian town where these old men still sit there playing backgammon and they sit on the square, these kids have found a home, and Karim represents the possibilities, I think, if they're supported.
Nima Elbagir, thank you very much indeed. Really amazing, because, as I say, we've been reporting just the numbers, the statistics, we've been seeing what's happening on the Mediterranean, but to follow them and see what happens to them is remarkable. Thank you very much. Thank you.